Many fear that China's economy will collapse like Japan's did in the 90s. Ha! If only China were that lucky. China's collapse will be much, much worse. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. China's economy is facing a death as slow and painful as that death scene from Karate Girl. The Communist Party is at least trying to delay it. Last week, Chinese leader Xi Jinping made his first known visit to the People's Bank of China in Beijing. And Xi Jinping must have been desperate because the CCP did something it never does: revise its budget. Remember, China is a communist country. It has a state-planned economy. Changing it means maybe the party messed up. After his visit, the CCP announced that it would issue new local government debt limits. China also increased bond insurance by 1 trillion yuan, that's about $137 billion. That money is for infrastructure projects, which is usually handled by local governments, not the central government. But the Chinese regime is going to extreme lengths to try and salvage the economy. Because if state control of the economy wrecked it, then we need even more state control of the economy. Given China's disastrous economic situation, some are asking if China's economy is facing Japanification or Japanization. Comparing China to Japan is probably about the greatest insult you can give them. See, Japan faced a prolonged period of low growth and deflation after an asset bubble implosion in the 90s, followed by multiple banking crises. That's why they're calling it Japanization. I prefer to call it, I think they're turning Japanese. I really think so. And a former official with Bank of Japan and the International Monetary Fund seems to think so too.
If the current malaise in property market or the adjustment continues, it could end up with Japanese-style prolonged stagnation in the coming years.
There are similarities between Japan's recession and what's happening in China now, particularly bad government spending choices. See if any of this sounds familiar to you. The Japan Research Institute notes that China, like Japan, now faces falling prices, increasing youth unemployment, and a floundering real estate market. A Bank of Japan board member says what's fast emerging is the risk of China slipping into deflation, or the Japanization of its economy. Yeah, even Japan is talking about the Japanization of China. Is it just me, or does that sound really racist? I'm sorry. But of course, Chinese state-run media say that the analogy between Japan and China is seriously flawed, and that rampant Western slander of China's Japanification is both farcical and pitiful. Yes, because Japan, who also made the comparison, is definitely a Western country. That's why there are so many Wild West cowboy movies about the Meiji era. According to my favorite Chinese state-run media, the Global Times, China's current economic situation is more like that of Japan in the 1970s, when Japan's economy was prosperous and achieving technological progress on many fronts. How can they say that when all of the data, even by their own numbers, say otherwise? Well, what China's economy is experiencing now is the growing pains amid transitioning from a stage of high-speed growth to a stage of high-quality development. The downward pressure is temporary. In fact, this is the best period in China's history in terms of technological innovation and progress. Now, this may surprise you, especially because I don't often agree with Chinese state-run media, but in this case, I think they're right. What's happening in China now is not like what happened in Japan. It's much worse. I'll tell you why after the break. Welcome back. Many now say that China will repeat history with a Japan-like stagnation, but that's being very optimistic. China will face much worse. Japan in the 1990s was nothing like China is now. And not just because Japan wasn't actively covering up absolutely nothing happening in 1989 in Tiananmen Square. The average Japanese citizen was much wealthier than Chinese citizens today. Just look at the difference in GDP per capita. To be clear, that's China at the bottom. That makes a difference because more developed countries tend to be able to bear more debt. On top of that, Japan is a free and open democracy that, despite its economic setbacks, has largely avoided major catastrophes. Mostly. and it remains a socially stable society with relatively little crime. The economist Paul Krugman says Japan, rather than being a cautionary tale, is a kind of role model, an example of how to manage difficult demography while remaining prosperous and socially stable. The same cannot be said of China. Birth rates are plummeting, and also an unknown number of people died from COVID. That means fewer workers and more old people future generations have to take care of. The one-child policy was a bad idea. Who knew making having a brother or sister illegal would be an oopsie? Then there's unemployment. Remember when I referenced how China's youth unemployment rate was similar to Japan's? Well, here's the thing. That comparison is based on just official Chinese data. And that data includes those who worked as little as just 1 hour in a week. It also excludes rural populations, which make up almost 500 million people in China. And they also stopped reporting youth unemployment after it hit record highs. So Japan's unemployment rate was not nearly as bad as China's. Then there's China's real estate crisis. China's real estate sector makes up a huge chunk of China's economy, around 30%, far more than it did for Japan. And since it operates on a Ponzi scheme fueled by debt, there's some issues. I've made a bajillion episodes about the real estate crisis, so check those out if you want more details. But it's having a ripple effect across China's economy, and people can't afford homes. So, to compare, at the peak of Japan's asset price bubble, the average price of a brand new apartment in the Tokyo metropolitan area reached 18.12 times the average annual income. Right now, Chinese cities have house price to income ratios as high as 50 to 1. That's insane. And unlike Japan, China's property bubble is full of very complicated financial links involving not only banks, but non-bank financial institutions and local governments, investment companies, insurance companies, and more importantly, opaque shadow banking. China's solution? More loans and debt to kick the can down the road. Now, some argue China's technology sector can come to the rescue, but that's assuming that China's tech sector won't have the made in China quality we've all come to expect. Plus, it's going to be difficult to have the tech sector replace the real estate sector as an economic driver when the US keeps sanctioning it. The moral of the story? China's collapse will be much worse than Japan's. It's all thanks to the Chinese Communist Party. Turns out communists aren't good with money. Now, I got a video I want to show you that I think will tickle your fancy. But first, it's time to show love to the people who make this show possible. The China Uncensored 50-cent Army. Fans who support the show on patreon.com/China Uncensored. As a way of thanks, I answer their questions at the end of these episodes. Today's question comes from Jason Cole. Hello, Chris. Love your work. Thanks. Do you think there will be regime change in China in the next 20 years? And could there ever be a serious reformer in the top spot? That's a great question and a tricky one to answer. I do believe that the CCP will fall, but a lot of people have tried to predict when, and they've all been wrong so far. The CCP has been very good at staving off collapse, which on the bright side means I can still make China Uncensored. I don't think reform can happen as long as the CCP is still in power, though, because corruption is baked into the system, and reform might not even happen after it falls. There's always the possibility that Xi Jinping will go down and some new system will pop up that's the same old Communist Party members, just with a different veneer. But China was around a long time before the CCP, and it will be around a long time after it's gone. That I know for sure. Thanks for your question and your support. Cool. And here's the video I want to show you. Click here for the latest from my gaming channel, where I talk about politics to slip under YouTube's censorship radar. I call it Deep Thoughts While Gaming. And if you want to support China Uncensored on Patreon, click that orange button. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.